Thank you for staying with me here on Artbeat. And Dr. Joycelyn Elders is going to be in town, and as you all know, she's the former Surgeon General of the United States. She's coming in for a keynote fundraising event put on by Peninsula Behavioral Health as a fundraiser for their many projects, especially focused on kids. And that event, of course, is Friday, May the 11th. Call for tickets 457-0431. But Dr. Elders, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have you here on Artbeat with me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So you grew up in southern Arkansas and eventually became, very prominent in that state. But describe the town and the circumstances you grew in, because it was a long way from where you started to where you ended up.
You are absolutely correct about that. I grew up in a very small rural farming community, the population of 98 when I'm in Little Rock. The only thing we knew was work. We didn't have, we didn't even have electricity, and that's usually as basic as you can get. So you didn't have running water and gas and things of that sort. But before I left, or about the time I was leaving, we did get some electricity there. So it was a very deprived, very poor, very unenriched community, but a community that where everybody in the community was your parent, and everybody knew everybody, and you could go to any house and eat if you were hungry.
And Dr. Elders, of course, it was a time when segregation was in full force. So you actually started off doing things like picking cotton when you were just 5 years old and trying to squeeze an education into that.
That's correct. My dad was a farmer, and we were trying to, everybody had to work. We were trying to make a living. And when I was 5 years old, I was out trying to help him plant corn. I remember on a plowed field, and the whole field looked exactly the same to me, and I had no idea where the row was. But we all worked, my mom, my dad, and as I had more sisters and brothers, from sunup to sundown.
And Dr. Elders, someone, or obviously perhaps in your case many people, must have been right behind you in terms of pushing you forward down the path of education, which wasn't easy at that time for anybody, let alone a poor black kid. So who were your role models? Who were your heroes that made it possible for you to move from Charles in southern Arkansas to Washington, D.C.?
Oh, that list is so long we would never get through it. So let me get out of Shawl first. I think my mom was a very strong promoter of, she always told us, if you want to get out of the cotton patch, you've got to get something in your head. And she always promoted, do your best. It may not be as well as somebody else can do it, but do your best, and that's good enough. And I think we all walked away with that in tune with us. And then our teachers, they were more than they taught more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. They were out trying to teach us to be physically, emotionally, psychologically fit and ready to face the world. But our home economics teacher, as a directive from our State Department, was told to be sure to teach your girls to be good maids. And I'll tell you, today, I'm still the best maid I know. But the boys were taught agriculture. That was the emphasis of school. And how I moved from that is we finally had a chemistry teacher who began to talk to us about science and chemistry, but I still had no concept until I went to Philander Smith College, and I saw the first doctor that I'd ever seen. And this was a black woman who was the very first black student to attend the University of Arkansas. And to this day, I can still remember what she talked about. I can remember what she looked. And I tell people often ask me, say, Dr. Elders, did you always want to be the Surgeon General? I remind them that you can't be what you can't see. And if you've never seen a doctor until you're in college, how can you grow up planning to be the Surgeon General?
You've been outspoken about your commitment to making sure that every child, whether black, white, Hispanic, poor, rich, or middle class, has the opportunity to make the most of their talents, as you did, to live up to your full potential or their full potential. And obviously, education was key for you and is key for others. So can you talk about your feelings about the role of education as an equalizer on the playing field for all Americans?
I think that education is the greatest equalizer there is. You can't educate people if they're not healthy, and you certainly can't keep them healthy if they're not educated. And of course, I was always about children being planned, wanted children, and remind people that the best contraceptive in the world is a good education. So I very much felt that we needed to educate children starting very early, with early childhood education. We needed comprehensive health education in our schools from kindergarten through 12th grade, as all parents don't know how to do health education for their children, and they don't want to teach them anything wrong, so they don't teach them anything. And they go out and they end up really getting in trouble. We need to educate parents. We need to teach our young men to be responsible, that it's not just a girl responsibility, it's a responsibility for all of us. We need healthy people if we want to have a healthy community. And I think schools play a very key role in that.
And I'm sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
I was actually going to come back to your your life as Surgeon General too, and ask how you met. How did you get introduced to President Bill Clinton, who of course appointed you as Surgeon General?
Well, I met. In Arkansas, we're a very small state. We have less than 2 million people at that time. I think we're over that now, but not much. But we kind of knew everybody knew everybody, and a family had a reception the very first time I met him at their house, which was across the street from my house. And I went, and that's when I first met him. He was running for Attorney General for the state of Arkansas at that time, and I continued, to be. He would appoint me to boards and commissions. Finally asked me if I would be the director of health for the state of Arkansas. Well, I was on the university faculty. I was a pediatric endocrinologist, a full professor, and I thought I didn't really look at that job as being better than the one I had, but he convinced me that I should take that job, and my mother saw him on TV. And she said, I saw the president on TV last night, and he just looked pitiful. So you need to go on up to Washington and help him. Well, that's how. So when he asked me to be the health commissioner for the state of Arkansas, I had no intention of taking that job, and I called him to talk about it, to find out what did he have in mind, and so I told him, I said, I'll take that job on condition of three things. One, you let me run the health department, and I want to make sure I retain my appointment at the university. I'm not going to give up a tenured faculty appointment to go take a state-appointed job where they can fire you when they get ready. And I said, I get a raise. Well, I didn't. He said he promised all. He said I'll see what I can do. Well, I didn't think he could get any of it done, to tell you the truth. And so I didn't even worry about it. He called me back a few days later and he said, Dr. Elders, I got it all done. Will you take it? I said, oh. And I was ready to talk about it. I said, I don't want to lie. And he said, thank you, bye, and hung up the phone.
For those just joining us, my guest is Dr. Joycelyn Elders, former Surgeon General of the United States and the keynote speaker at the Peninsula Behavioral Health's annual fundraiser, which is next Friday at the Vern Burton Center. Tickets still available at 457-0431. Dr. Elders, President Clinton, of course, nominated you after what you've just described later on as the 16th as Surgeon General of the U.S., and that was a grueling process, and not so much perhaps because of race, but just because of the contentious issues at the time that were pitting Republican against Democrat. And you, of course, were a Democrat with well-known liberal views on sex education. So that process must have been really quite daunting.
You are absolutely correct. The process was very grueling. But I don't know why I didn't take anything that was being said to me about me, or I didn't take it really personally. I felt, I was very confident in myself at the time. I tell people all the time, I went to Washington feeling like I was prime steak, but by the time I left, I felt like low-grade hamburger. but anyway, I felt that I was going there because I was really the very best person to make a difference about the things I wanted to make a difference in. I wanted to make sure that all children were planned and wanted. They grew up with an opportunity to be healthy, educated, motivated, and have hope for the future. And I really was going to push for that. I was very clear about my goals, and I didn't feel that, I didn't worry about what anybody else thought about it.
Over the years, you have been, and of course still are, a role model for women, especially young women, whose ability to control their own sexuality or to decide when and if they want to have kids is crucial in allowing them to complete an education or maybe get going on a career. So how did you see your role in terms of women and young women when you were Surgeon General in helping them be successful?
I saw my role as helping young women decide about their own sexuality. I felt that they were in charge of their own sexuality, and they had to be responsible for their own sexual health. And the way you do that is you educate them, give them the knowledge, and empower. And then they will be empowered to make a difference. So I felt we had to have healthy sexuality in our schools from throughout, so that all women, all children would get that opportunity. And I felt that women had to be empowered to make a difference in their own lives, and the best way to do that is through education. And well, now, we haven't gotten there yet, but we have more women in college than we have men.
The title of the talk that you'll give at the fundraising dinner next Friday at the Vern Burton is Education, a Key to a Healthy America. What will be the thrust of your speech to the folks gathering there for dinner?
Well, the thrust of my speech for the folks gathering there for dinner would be to talk about the critical importance of education, starting very early with the idea we can't educate children if they aren't healthy. We can't keep them healthy if they're not educated. The foundation of a healthy society is an educated populace, and we've got to go out and get started very early if we want to make a real difference.
And it's going to be a privilege to hear you. Looking down the line a little bit, Dr. Elders, how optimistic or pessimistic are you about the state of our education system, the state of our health care and access to it in the U.S., and how confident are you that it will be improved over the next few years, or maybe not?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist. I guess I had to be that to get where I am, and I just felt that what you need to do is be clear about your own goals. Decide what it is that you want to do. And don't worry about other people getting in the way, and that you have to use everybody you can to help you get there. I feel that we in America, we're going to have to decide that we want a healthcare system versus a very expensive sick care system, which is what we have now. We're the best in the world, best doctors, best hospitals, best nurses, cutting-edge research. when it comes to sick care. But we have done a very poor job in talking about keeping people healthy. And we're talking about making sure that they, get their checkups, don't get involved in excessive alcohol, drug abuse, to really get involved, to make sure we take care of their mental health status, to make sure that people are healthy. We can do more than to improve our own health than all the doctors in the world.
My guest has been Dr. Joycelyn Elders, former Surgeon General of the United States, and we will be welcoming here to Port Angeles on Friday, May the 11th. She'll be at the Vern Burton Community Center for a very special event. The event kicks off at 5 o'clock on Friday, 6 p.m. dinner, and then Dr. Elders will be on stage shortly after that. And it is a fundraiser for Peninsula Behavioral Health. For tickets, 457-0431, extension 227. And Dr. Elders, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to have you here on Artbeat with me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, and I thank you. And the big emphasis is we've got to focus on prevention, keeping people well.
Stay with me. We'll be right back.